Greetings to you in the name of Yahusha, the Hashwar Hebrew name for Jesus. I'm Michael Hoshai, and I'm with you today to continue in the series Revelation in Light of Daniel with Part 4, Babylon the Lion. Now, if you have not watched the previous videos, I highly recommend that you stop this one and go back and watch those so you can catch up with us today, because today's recap is not going to be very long. We've got a little bit of stuff to cover, and we don't have too much time to waste. Without further ado, we learned that King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, after doing all the things to Jerusalem that he did and taking the people into captivity, had a dream that troubled his thoughts. He did not trust his people. In chapter 2, that he called to make the dream known to him as well as the interpretation. They couldn't do it. He was going to kill him. Daniel comes to save the day by the mercy of the Father Yah with the dream as well as the interpretation. And the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had that troubled him was of a statue, which you see in front of you, but we must also add the block that was cut out of the mountain without hands. And what the dream basically was is it showed this statue, then it showed the block coming in, hitting the feet, and destroying the entire statue. We learned that the head of gold was Babylon. And then we learned that the silver arms and chest was Persia, who defeated Babylon. And then we learned that the brass belly and waist was Greece, who came in and defeated Persia. And then we learned that these legs of iron was none other than Rome, although Daniel did not identify this fourth kingdom. We found out by other means that it is indeed Rome whom defeated Greece. And we learned that Rome was beginning to fall apart and that these feet and toes were continuations of Rome. 10 little piggies. Unfortunately, the little piggies were made with clay and iron and, of course, would not stand in the power of Rome. So they were defeated by none other than this stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands. And this kingdom that defeated the statue and all these other kingdoms was none other than Yahusha, or more commonly known as Jesus. And we learned how the Father, through the Son, that the empire would reign and be everlasting. So with that, we turn around and we say goodbye to wonderful Nebuchadnezzar's statue. Goodbye, statue. With that, we're going to open up another one shortly. So without further ado, let's continue on. We're going to go ahead and get that statue up, and we're going to go into scripture. So here it is that we have transitioned from Nebuchadnezzar's dream in chapter 2. And then we read about Belshazzar losing the kingdom to the Medo-Persians through the writing on the wall, which said, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. And then we learned how, in chapter 8, that the ram was identified as Medo-Persia, and the Greece, the goat that came up against him, was also identified in chapter 8 as well. So now here we are in chapter 7 with Daniel's visions. Now, as has been mentioned, that Daniel may or may not have suffered a heart attack after reading through the visions of the first 4 creatures. We're going to see why he was weak and fell down on his face, and Gabriel had to stand him up. Now, the symptoms that he suffered do resemble and are parallel with heart attacks, but we cannot say one way or the other. So I'm not going to rule it out. I'll leave your interpretation to you. Without further ado, let's get into Daniel's visions. Daniel chapter 7, we're going to begin in verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dreams and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Here it is. We've just learned of the 4 beasts, and we've learned everything that we're going to talk about in this section of Daniel's visions. Everything you see right here is related to the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, which we discussed in the previous videos. And now today we're going to show you how that works. We're going to stay right here with verse 4 in chapter 7, where it says, The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld until the wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Here it is that we have the description of Daniel's first beast, and it is a lion. And the title of the video is Babylon the Lion. Well, G. Michael, how do we know that this is true? Wow, wonderful question. Let's go find the answers. If we turn to Jeremiah and chapter, I got to find it first here real quick. My apologies. There it is, Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 17. What does it read? Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First, the king of Assyria hath devoured him. And last, this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, hath broken his bones. So here we see without doubt that Assyria and Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon are considered lions. Yay! So let's continue on. We're going to go to the very next chapter of Jeremiah 51, and we're going to first read 28 through 29. Now, you will remember, if you've watched the videos previously, that the people Israel were promised to go into captivity by Yahweh because of their disobedience in breaking the covenant, the first covenant, which is the 10 Commandments, and they did not adhere to what Moses said when he said, you must circumcise the foreskin of your hearts, or the flesh of your hearts, which was a reference to the circumcision of the physical flesh according to the promise and the covenant of Abraham. And so therefore, when they broke this covenant, God promised them that they would go into captivity. And here it is that they have done so. But however, Nebuchadnezzar was brought up against them, and he did a lot of things that in his heart was against the people out of joy for punishment. And this being against the people were also against the Father, Yah. So Yah would bring down punishment on Babylon. And we're going to see right here in verse 28 where Babylon is predicted, where the Medo-Persians are predicted to take over Babylon because of its transgressions against the Father. So let's read what it says. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes. Now we learned in chapter 2 that God, Yahweh, was going to bring the Medes and the Persians against Babylon and give the kingdom of Babylon to them. And here it is in Jeremiah that we read the same thing. The captains there of and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon. A desolation, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. So here we see that we already know that Babylon's going to fall outside of Daniel. And let's go down to verses 35 through 38 to continue understanding how we mark Babylon as the lion. The violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babylon, shall the inhabitant of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Chaldea, shall Jerusalem say. Now you will remember that the Chaldeans were some of the wise men that King Nebuchadnezzar called up to interpret the dream and make it known to him. And the actual empire was called Neo-Babylonian Empire. So that there was a mix of Chaldeans. It was a shift of governments, of leadership, and so forth, and beliefs that brought all this stuff in. Nonetheless, Chaldea was marked as Babylon, and Babylon is marked as the lion. Let's continue on. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will plead thy cause and take vengeance for thee, and I will dry up her sea and make her springs dry, and Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment and an hissing without an inhabitant. They shall roar together like lions. They shall yell as lions' whelps. So, here it is that we see that Babylon is marked as lions, as prophesied by Daniel's vision here in chapter 7, verse 4, which read, the first was like a lion. Now we read the next part, and had eagle's wings. Usually the representation of wings marks the speed with which conquest and conquering was done. At this point, Nebuchadnezzar was the quickest of all those before him. But it will be notably seen that the succeeding empires would be even quicker. Nonetheless, here it is. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. Well, what does this mean? Well, here's what you got to understand. A normal man does not think about ruling the world. A normal individual, especially a follower of Yahusha and a believer of Yah, we don't think about things such as that. So it takes an individual that is chosen to do so. And in order to want to conquer the known world, you must have the heart of a lion. You must be as fierce as a lion. So here it is that the wings were plucked off. How was that taken away? Well, in order to do that, we have to go back to Daniel and chapter 4, which is where Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. It was a big tree and whatnot. Then it was cut down, but the stump was left, and the dew of the earth was set down upon it. What was happening here? Once again, he called Daniel in to make interpret the dream to him, and it turned out that Yahweh was telling Nebuchadnezzar that I'm going to cut you down. And here it is. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast in the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto it. And let 7 times pass over him. So here it is that Yahweh is telling him, you know what, you're getting cut down because I don't like the way you did things. I don't like the fact that you've seen my power and you still do not believe. So as we continue reading in chapter 4, we learn that that Nebuchadnezzar was struck down to be like an animal, to believe that he was an animal. All reason, all logic, all sensibility, all wit has been taken away from him. And he literally lived like an animal. And it says here, in verse 33 of chapter 4, it says, "The same hour was the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men and did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes to heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me." Now, one of the stipulations of the dream was that he was going to live as an animal, as we read earlier, and 7 times shall pass over him. That is a period of time that is prophesied to pass until Nebuchadnezzar recognizes the one true Most High God, the Father, Yah, in his heart. And this is what we're seeing in verse 34, where it says, "And lifted up mine eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me, and I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation." This marks not only what's going on in Daniel chapter 7 as having the wings plucked, because believe me, if you lose your sanity and you start living as an animal, they're going to drive you out like an animal, and you can no longer make war, and the empire will not expand. So this is how the wings were plucked from the lion. And it also marks that rock that was cut out of the mountain from chapter 2 of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, that the kingdom would be established forever and be everlasting. Here it marks that as well. And as in chapter 4 we read that the time had passed, and when Nebuchadnezzar in his heart recognized and honored Yah the Father, then his senses, his logic, his reason, his wits all returned to him, and he stood upon his feet. So if we go back to Daniel chapter 7, we see the first was like a lion that we read of in Jeremiah, and had eagle's wings. His empire spread quickly. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, as when Nebuchadnezzar was made to be as an animal. This is called boanthropy. You may look up boanthropy in a dictionary, and you will see that it is a mental state where an individual actually believes that they are an animal and eats grass like ox and lives as an animal, not as a human being. And that is where the wings were plucked, and was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man. So as soon as Nebuchadnezzar recognized and worshiped the one true Most High God, Yah, he was stood up, and his heart was given to him. A man's heart was given to it. This is how we know that Daniel's vision of the lion was Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar. So this is why the video is entitled Babylon the Lion. So as we can see here with the statue on the left, there's the statue that was in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. And we just learned that the head of gold was indeed Babylon, and you see right here a lion with wings. This is how we know that the head of gold and Daniel's vision of 7 was none other than Nebuchadnezzar. And now, since you've heard so much about Nebuchadnezzar, I would like to introduce you to Nebuchadnezzar. This is the man, the one we've been speaking of. Nebuchadnezzar, whom had the vision, the dream of the statue. This is the one who built the furnace and threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fire. This is also the one who threw Daniel into the lion's den. And this is the one who was made to live like an ox or a beast in the field and ate grass and did not live as a human being. So now that we have learned of Nebuchadnezzar and who he is and apparently what he looks like, we can now go ahead and say goodbye, Mr. Nebuchadnezzar. We are done with you for now. We will see you again shortly. Goodbye, Nebby. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I will gladly answer anything you have. Again, there is an article that was written, which is pasted in the comments of the first video. You may go and check it out as well. I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again in part 5. Until then, have a good day.